With day 11, summer was smiling on me and the fields were covered with golden brown barley. This was my chance to prove myself that I am ready to take matters in my own hands. The combine was waiting for me. I tried starting it, but something was wrong. The engine didn't want to crank. I tried one more time, but to no avail. I had to look for the cause of the stalling. Upon close inspection, I noticed one of the timing belts had snapped. I had no other option other than to sprint to the mechanic shop and look for a replacement. And I was in luck. The part I needed was available. I only had to find it in the sea of boxes, and I thought I would waste my entire day rummaging through all the inventory. To my surprise, I found it. Now the question was, is this the sole perpetrator that was holding me back from becoming the greatest farming driver in front of you? I spent the next 2 hours fiddling with the oily and grime covered metallic gears. In the end, the belt was changed and we were ready to rock. The sun was scorching hot and I needed to switch my dripping clothes for a new pair. I jumped into the combine and it purred like a kitty, like it knew we meant business. All what was needed now was the header, which was attached. And let's not forget about the trailer. I was just about to get it when I spotted a deer. I tried chasing it, but the sound of my amazing flip-flop scared it away. I'll catch you next time, Bambi, I promise. I drove the tractor to the shed and I touched the trailer. All was looking good. We were ready for harvest. Immediately after the barley started dropping in the bin, I noticed I have switched the straw swat on. At first glance, I wasn't planning on saving the straw, but I said to myself, what the hell, and continued dropping it behind. Shortly after the first field was harvested, a strange sound was coming from the cabin. This annoying signal was there to remind me of the vast amount of grain I was holding. The only way to stop that annoying sound was to empty it, so that's what I did. I will not make the same mistake and sell the barley right away. The grain is going to be stored in the silo. We will keep it there until the prices get better during the winter. I made a few more passes on the second field before a strange light came on. That light was my fuel warning signal. The combine was getting low on diesel. Unfortunately, there was no fuel on the farm, so I was left with only one option. I started the old pickup and went to the city to look for fuel. I stopped at the gas station, but they weren't selling any canisters. I didn't want to do it, but a special fuel trailer was rented. This behemoth was capable of holding enough fuel for a full round trip around somebody's mom. Pun intended. I filled the trailer with half load as it will be more than enough for our needs and decided to say hi to Katie. I was feeling a bit nervous because of the goon stalking from behind her back. After making sure she was good, I returned to the farm and unloaded all the fuel in the rusty tank that was probably older than half of my viewers. The truck was stopped under the shade just in case any fumes decided to play a joke on me and drove the combine to get it filled up. With the diesel happily bouncing in the combine, it took me one more circle before I had to unload it again. This time things were looking great. I was feeling confident after seeing my straight straw lines on the ground. Once I was almost half done with the third field, that annoying sound of the full bin was ringing in my ear. I was really trying to optimize my runs. After around 30 minutes of constant cutting and taking trips down to the silo, I was finally done with the fields. The sheer sense of success boosted the only feeling I can have after so much work. Of course, the feeling of hunger. But before I even managed to reach the kitchen, Uncle Ben called about wanting to see me ASAP. I sprinted towards him only to find out he wanted to explain about hiring workers. As you may know, in Farming Simulator you can hire helpers to work for you on most tasks like harvesting, mowing, baling, even driving crops or products to different points on the map. But I didn't want to pay someone to work for me as every dollar counted. I ate my lunch and hopped back on the old Macy. In front of me was the final obstacle. This huge plot was waiting for me, and I wasn't going to hold back. I tore up the ground like my life depended on it. My passes were so clean, even my wife was impressed, and she hasn't played 1 minute of Farming Simulator. Before you know it, the sun was nested away, and with it the last barley stems were cut. While the trailer was emptying, I noticed how much we actually managed to get from the land. We were a bit shy from 60,000 liters. On day 12, I noticed something strange was poking from the straw. These little green plants were weeds. Mother Nature was trying to reclaim what was hers, but I wasn't having it. Last night Grandpa gave me great advice. I was going to bale the straw and just like the barley, I'm going to sell it around January. But for this to happen, I would need special equipment. The old John Deere got its life support system filled and I drove down to the shop. While I was browsing inside, I saw there were a few windrowers. I was so impressed with the size that I decided I was going to spend the extra cash just to try the stake. The Kuhn baler is also something I haven't worked with. With my new toys, I drove back to the field and left it there. Next was the baler. With both tools at the ready, there was only one thing left to do: make the straw lines bigger and straighter. In a few minutes I was ready to hop on the baler. This aerial shot is another proof of how much time windrowing is saving. Next task was baling. The Challenger was rumbling, eager to drive the straw down the hatch and turn it 180 degrees. Seeing the first bale drop, a strange feeling of little satisfaction was crawling up around my neck. I was liking what I was seeing. With the last bale rolling, the total amount was 22 big 180 centimeter bales. I am going to store them in the barn until their time comes. Just as if Mother Nature was trying to punish me for driving on top of the weeds, rain was about to start hitting the bales. And I was right. In the nick of time, the last bale was placed in the barn before the water destroyed it. I wanted to clean the machines before I turned them in, but I didn't have any way of doing so. On my way to the shop, I saw the cornfield and I remembered. I haven't checked on it in a while. Luckily, the plants were looking good, only some small weeds were showing too, but they won't affect the growth stages. I continued my way towards returning the dirty machines and I got yelled at from the logistics manager. I did what every man should do in this situation and I fully ignored him, hopped back in the tractor, leaving him red-faced. The weather wasn't looking good, so I decided to stay indoors. Rain turned into hailstorm. Everybody was hiding. Only the nasty goons were staying outside, spying on me and Grandpa. On day 13, Grandpa wanted me to check on Noah. He was calling about an idea he had and how it would benefit everyone. I already proved I could be of a help, so I didn't think twice. When we met, he explained about an old abandoned grain elevator that was recently bought by some investors, with the idea to turn it into a museum. Noah couldn't meet those people, so I offered my help and I went to the site to meet them. This father-son duo you see are Tom and Gary, some big farmers from down south. They gave me an extensive rundown of the building and how they wanted to turn it into an exhibition site and help the locals. But they couldn't get the materials. This is where me and Noah come into play. This huge structure will need tons of lumber and other resources we can help supply. I drove back to Noah to tell him of what just happened, but he had a small problem. The sawmill has a big contract with the state, so providing lumber from it wasn't an option, but he suggested installing a smaller sawmill at Grandpa's farm. With it, I can make any timber products the investors would need. The catch is, it will cost me $30,000 to build. I agreed and drove back home. Before you even know it, a cold feeling was running down my spine. The mafia guys were back and they had even bigger guns. I totally forgot to pay them for 2 days and they were here to collect their own. I was down $40,000 in total. So I decided I was going to wait inside the house. After 1 hour, the small sawmill was built and it looked awesome. Noah placed it in the perfect spot in front of Grandpa's eyes. We were ready for action. I already had the list of products needed, so I started doing what I was already proficient in, cutting them trees. In no time, I was delivering so much wood that we had enough to fulfill the order. All I needed was a way to transport it to the renovating site. This is where the trailer comes into play. I decided to remove all the walls of the grain cart and turn it into a small frame trailer. With the platform attached, there was a new challenge on the horizon. Am I good at stacking wooden boards and beams on top of each other? I carefully traversed around and loaded every pallet. In the end, the stack was looking okay and stable enough. I strapped it and drove off to the investors. When I arrived, I learned something truly amazing. They were going to pay me top dollar for my effort. I was just about starting thinking this would be a waste of time when I saw the money really rolling in, and I was speechless of their generosity. Next thing I know, I stopped to thank Noah and tell him about the great job he did with my new saw shed. Before I went home, I remember about the weeds in the cornfield and stopped by to grab a sprayer. Once again, I ignored the logistic manager, which was funny in its own, and drove back to the farm to fill it with chemicals that will ensure those small green buggers won't steal any vital nutrients from the maize. Seeing how tall the plants were, I wasn't sure if it was the right choice to drive into them, but I decided to do it anyways. The option to lift the mechanical arms helped me not to crush the stems, and I was able to make 2 passes and deal with the weeds. By day 14, I really liked where the farm was going. I had a brand new sawmill built. The bees have made a lot of honey, the sheep farm was looking great, and the barn was full with straw and barley. I took a walk to the cornfield and I noticed it was ready to be transformed to silage. Katie was my only option to ask of how to do it. She explained I would need access to the biogas plant if I wanted to make any profit from that small field. It was vital to do it even before getting any equipment, so I drove all the way up to scout the place. To my surprise, I was greeted by Tom at the entrance, who knew he and his father were the brand new owners of this huge place. I told him of my corn adventure and he agreed to let me in. I showed my dancing skills as a way of gratitude and decided to do a victory lap around the place. With the biogas plant secured, I would need a way to cut and transport the chaff. There was no way around it. I had to lease the forage harvester and the trailer. I wasn't prepared for the total cost of the machine, but it was too late. I had invested too much time and effort to quit at the final sprint. The machine I went for was the New Holland FR 780. This monster was so enormous it looked ready to devour even your grandparents who gave you $1 and told you not to spend it all at once. The harvester was at the ready, only thing that was missing was the trailer. I parked the Challenger alongside the field when I remembered this was a 2-people operation. Then it hit me, I could hire a driver. So I unfolded the FR and placed it carefully on the corn. The driver was hired and oh, hell broke loose. Good thing this was a game and not real life, or this could have turned to Peggy 18 in an instant. Nevertheless, I backed up the trailer and we did a second try, which actually turned out good. I was getting fresh cut chaff thrown at me. The driver had some questionable techniques regarding of how to turn the harvester, so I had to close my eyes and ignore it, or face the consequences of having to drive that thing by myself. We made one full circle before it was time to drive towards the biogas plant. I stopped at the entrance scale to see the total weight. It was showing 29 tons, which it wasn't as heavy as I thought, and I must remember to stop when exiting again. Usually that's how you do it in real life. When I was just about to drop the chaff, I was yelled at not to do it in this bunker but to drive to the other side, which I didn't understand why, and at that moment I couldn't care less. With the first load of maize in the bunker, I drove back to the field to enjoy some more Tokyo Drift shenanigans. Before you even know it, and 4 more runs, we cutted the last pieces of corn. However, there was no time for celebration. I was already too nervous to have such expensive machine on my disposal that I immediately drove it back to the store. After the New Holland was cleared, I dropped the remaining bits of chaff at the bunker and started compressing the material, imagining this is what crushing the competition on YouTube really feels like. When daydreaming was done and chaff was covered, I stopped to thank Tom and drove away, but don't you think he won't be compensated properly? I backed up the tractor like a real farmer, and I remembered the pickup was all the way at the shop, so I decided to take a walk and drive it back. The plan worked great. I almost got run over, but in the end I was home safe and sound. We had a pleasant chat with Grandpa of how both our days went, which was pretty strange as all he does is staying in front of the house. I went inside to take my well-deserved rest. Or so I thought. In the middle of the night, I heard some loud banging on the door and some bright lights. Them lights were so bright I froze like a deer on the road. The mafia guys were back, but this time they weren't here for the money. They were here for me. Grandpa was speechless as I was, but we didn't have a choice. Seeing their armament helped me decide I will go with them. I wasn't fully in the truck when I was knocked out cold. I woke up after almost 24 hours staring upside down with a massive headache. I wasn't sure what was happening or where I was, so I panicked and started looking around. I started to understand what was happening. I was in the house of the mafia boss, and sure, there he was. This old, bathrobe-rocking old man wasn't somebody you should be messing with. I was ordered to go inside and await further instructions.